Like a trusted turnout jacket you've had for years, Flex 7 outer shell fabric delivers a perfectly broken-in feel on the very first wear. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology, Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tencatafabrics.com/flex7. Flex 7, powered by enforced technology, only from TenCate Protective Fabrics.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, those toxins lead to cancer. Protect yourself with MagnaGrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes. To get free grant assistance, visit magnagrip.com.
Hello and welcome to this month's Talking Tactics. I'm one of your hosts, David Polikoff, here with our other host, RJ. Sam will be joining us in a little bit. He's got to get the little ones to bed, so they're not running around distracting him. But today, with our tactics, we want to talk about some stuff that's kind of near and dear to our hearts, is special service work, where we're talking about rescue squads or rescue engines, truck companies, or even engine companies that are assigned, special service work on the fire ground. We want to hit a couple of topics things that we may not be doing on the fire ground all the time to things that we should be doing on the fire ground all the time. So RJ, I'm going to kick it to you. Obviously, it's just you and I right now. I want to start off with search, and it can be kind of a hot topic issue. People say, oh, vacant buildings, search them, don't search them. Everybody says every building's occupied till you say it's not occupied. But there is a gray area, with your situational awareness, your size up and all that stuff, and the risk versus reward type thing. I had it on my last podcast that I just put out. We talked about risk versus reward. We operate in a dangerous business, and there is an inherent risk that we take in the fire service, and we accept that risk when we sign on the dotted line to be a firefighter, whether you're getting a paycheck or you're not. Our job is to protect life first and then property. So let's start off with a little bit about search, and we can talk about high-risk search with vent enter isolate search, and just talk about the ways we can train to make our search techniques better, and maybe some things that you've learned along the way and some tips you want to pass on to the audience.
All right, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about prior to me getting kicked off with the internet was, about us doing our facts first, right? So finding out facts about search and a lot of facts that help us drive good searches, right? There's a lot of things that help factors in our search, right? Like where are people located certain times of day, that kind of thing, right? And what places are people occupying? So when we have that information, then we can take that information and we can train on that information, right? How do we get to those spaces to search, right? What are the different obstacles that we have? What are the different things that we have to deal with to get to those spaces? One of the things that I think that we do a pretty good job of is duplicating those scenarios in our training environments, right? It never fails when we go somewhere that we go to train in a structure. It's going to be empty. There's nothing realistic about the space that we're searching, or there's nothing realistic about the space that we're putting the students through. So, we talked about this many times, us being able to go out, us being able to pretty much refurnish a house to make it searchable as if we were searching those particular spaces. I think that's the first and foremost, most important thing that we need to do is address search facts and then train on those tactics as it relates to searching. And then one of the things that you mentioned, David, I wanted to just expand upon it a little bit more, is high risk search. Talk about enough, or the word we don't use enough is calculated risks, right? So again, this is not anytime we we're doing a search. We're not on a death wish or a suicide mission, but there is some things that we do need to think about before we begin a search. If you can look at a structure and it is 100% involved, well, there's no reason for us to even try to enter into a structure without trying to move water into the structure first, right? It's just, that's a suicide mission, right? But if there is space that we can search, right? We have 1 or 2 bedrooms that are not involved, and we have a lot more involvement in the house, well, then that's a calculated risk, right? We're calculating the fact that there is still some space for us to search, and it is worth us trying to make the search possible, right? And that's whether we do a vent enter search or we, take the interior stairs up to however we can get to that spot, right? So I think calculated risks is something that we don't talk about enough, but something that we should visit anytime we're talking about searching. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said in the very beginning, the job is full of risks. We came into this job knowing that, we deal with life and death situations. Fire's unpredictable, but we accept that inherent risk. And if you don't accept that risk, that our job has risk, then you're in the wrong job. But like you said, it all comes down to your situational awareness, a good size up, a good 360. I've heard people say, house is fully involved, and maybe the front of the house is involved. But when you start getting to the Charlie, Delta, and Bravo side, there's probably searchable areas. So while maybe that engine crew is working on the front to get it knocked down to advance that line inside, we could be searching those searchable areas. And one of the things that we talked about was vent enter search. Yes, it's a high risk maneuver. Doesn't happen all the time, but people need to understand that vent enter search is not just over ladders on upper floors. You can vent enter search a first floor room. You may be able to take that window out and step right in. Because there are bedrooms on first floors, and maybe that's the way that you're going to have to get in. So people need to understand that. But yeah, everything you says makes 100% sense, and you're correct. You have to make that calculated risk. You have to do a good size up. You have to do a really good 360 and point out where those searchable spaces are, get the crews back there and knock those searches out real quick. One of the other things I want to talk about, and I'll kick it right back to you, that you mentioned is when we train, and we have to train to do these things. We may, I know I got kind of bit when I did this. We talked about search in a class that I did over in Columbus a couple of years ago. And I said, vent enter search is maybe once or twice in a lifetime thing. And some New York guys we do it all the time. Like, okay, you do it all the time. But for most of America, vent enter search is not happening all the time. But we still got to practice and we got to train. And when you talk about practice, you can't just go into a sterile burn building that has nothing in it, because you're not going to get anything out of that. And like you said, when we train people to do vent enter search, we go to Goodwill and basically buy everything out of Goodwill, and we just load that room up like it's the biggest toy hoarding factory in a bedroom that you've ever seen. We want to be over the top when you do these searches. So when you get into a normal bedroom that's not so cluttered, it's not going to be such a shock to you. And I'll kick it right back to you.
Yes. So one of the things I wanted to add to that, the frequency of vent enter search. I guess it all depends on your department's culture, right? Most departments, you can look at a place like Baltimore. Most of our Baltimore friends could probably explain better who work there, but that's a normal tactic for them, right? You can guarantee look to see any picture of truck work in Baltimore City. You're going to see a ladder to the second floor of a row house, and you're going to always see somebody going in the window on the second floor. That's their culture, right? And honestly, it's a good culture, right? You always have somebody making the floor to start the search. I think that even the department that I work in, it's becoming more of a culture for us. It wasn't a common thing, and I think it's becoming more of a culture for us because of the training that we're doing and the way we're teaching people how to properly do the tactic, right? I've done vent enter search a handful of times, and I'll be honest with you, some of those times were really just for me to be able to get to the second floor pass because the front door was always clogged up, right? So, it's all dependent on the department's culture and how you train for it. And I would encourage anybody who works in a department where it's not a common thing in your department to implement it, starting with training, right? You start training on it, you make people feel comfortable on the tactic, and then it becomes pretty much second nature. So I would agree with you. I would also say that the variance of that is just people's culture, where they come from, where it may be a routine thing for them, and just because of lack of better, or lack of training on it, some people are just not comfortable doing it as much.
And I think, you struck something that rings true with the training. One of the, we're working on getting additional staffing on the apparatus. We're transitioning from 3-person to 4-person staffing in Frederick. And with that comes more bodies going through the front door. And where do most people usually end up? They get clogged up in the doorways and the stairwells and things like that. As you're coming in on a truck company and, you need to get up to the upper floors to be able to do some sort of rescue. You may find yourself throwing those ladders and getting up there to do some type of search, whether you're just knocking out the search in one room or you are knocking out the search in that room and then moving into the hallway because it's not compromised, and being able to get up to the second floor and knock that search out on those living areas, those bedroom areas. So I think you're correct. I think as people start training and recognizing the value of getting to the upper floors quickly, the whole getting ahead of the hand line. If you've got a fire on the first floor and you've got bedrooms on the second floor, then yeah, it is time to maybe throw that ladder so you can get up to those upper floors a lot quicker. So it is a viable tactic, and you are correct. We're seeing it a lot more. Since I've been in Frederick, I think I've seen it happen at least twice. One was with you. You doing that. That was a credible. Hey, we got people in there, to the point where you started questioning yourself. That you were going to run out of air, knowing that somebody was in there, and it ultimately wasn't. But yes, it is. Where I had said once in a career type thing, because it wasn't happening with that 3-person staffing. But now that you're getting that additional staffing on the apparatus and you want to get up to those upper floors a lot quicker, fires are burning faster. We want to get up there before fire gets a hold of those upper spaces, to knock out that search real quick. And it is a viable tactic. And we've gone to the point where we've committed in Frederick now of teaching that vent enter search. And you guys had a really good program set up. If you want to talk a little bit about that, how we set that training up, what it consisted of, and how easy it was and very inexpensive to knock this training out, ran the whole department through it.
Yeah, so I got to give credit to our training division. They are doing quarterly trainings, and each quarter they touch on a different topic. This one they did vent enter search. Our training division with the staff at the training academy knocked this one out of the park. Essentially, we were offered an opportunity to do training in an acquired structure on a military base near us, and we were able to take offices and convert them into bedrooms. And with that being said, we furnished those offices like bedrooms, full beds, toy chests, toys, the whole nine. And essentially what we did was we filled that space up with smoke, and members had to vent enter search. We had window props in the windows. They had to take the window, and then they had to enter the space. And then once they got into the space, they went out to the hallway, did a quick sweep. And one of the things, if you don't mind me just touching on a little bit, Dave, one of the things that we pushed pretty hard during this training, and not often do we do in vent enter search training, is spending just a second or two in the hallway. One of the biggest things we fail to do, and I talk about this quite a bit, is we fail to spend a little time in the hallway checking for any victims that might be in the hallway. And most importantly, we never talk about this, seeing what the conditions are in the hallway. And I think it's really important that people understand that we have to know what's going on outside of us. If we are operating in a space, and that is, let's say, the only good space, we need to know what's happening outside of that space. So during this training, we spent a little bit of time putting emphasis on not only just searching the hallway for victims, but looking up, looking down, and looking around in that hallway to see what the conditions are around us. The reality is, and I tell this to people all the time, the reality is I would probably say 85 to 90% of the time when we do a vent and a search, we don't come back out of the window unless the conditions are really bad. A lot of times, if the conditions are favorable, we can then, once we finish that search, we can then bounce down the hall to another room or bounce down the hall to another spot, down the stairs, whatever. But we can't do that unless we know what the conditions are in the hallway. So during this training, we pushed a lot of our members to understand how to look, how to check for conditions, rather than just dumping in on the floor and just slamming the door shut and getting to the search. Our training division ran everybody in the department from the top brass all the way down to pretty much anybody who is not in our current academy class, but everybody on the job went through the training. So close to 600 people all got a chance to spend a little bit of time doing a vent and a search. For some people, it was the first time they ever did it. For some people, it was a refresher, which is cool. And again, it's something that we don't do a lot, and they got a chance to just hone their skills while doing it. So yeah, our department, like I said, our training division knocked that out of the park. Hats off to them for putting that on for our department. But again, creating that culture and it starts with training.
Yeah, and I can attest that, not only was the weather, not favorable, it was pretty warm. The bedroom was loaded up, with toys and things like that. Even when I went through it, you think, oh, just a bedroom, I'm going to sweep that real quick. Members were spending anywhere between 3 to 7 minutes searching that one little square space to try to find the baby and come out. So it's good training, and it's pretty economical. And if anybody's interested, throw up in the comments, what we did, and we'll send you all the information on how we can put that together, the props that we used and things like that. We made it as realistic as possible. Moving on towards, we talk a lot about search and rescue and the importance, obviously, because that's going to be part of our job. Let's talk a little bit about searching, going through that window. I want to talk a little bit about, the days of slamming your tool down. Obviously, we don't do that when we're checking for, the sounding the floor and things like that. And then talk about the crisscross method that I think it's important that people understand, to be able to find that door right away. We'll finish up this topic on vent and search and we'll move on to something else. But I think those two components are important that people need to understand, sounding the floor, the correct way to do it, and then how we find that bedroom door to be able to, search behind it and then isolate that room.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is, and I was a victim of this many years ago. When we were always teaching people or always taught to go in, we would take our tool, slam it on the floor to make sure that, the floor was sound for us to go in. Again, we got to understand our facts, right? Where victims found, what's going on. When we understand the facts and we know what's happening in our communities, it helps us paint a better picture for training. So we have a good percentage of our victims that are found beneath windows, at windows, behind doors, at doors, right? So we want to try to get in the habit of stopping people from slamming their tools down to sound the floor. One of the biggest things we pushed in our training was sweeping them sounding, right? So if I can reach in, if I can use my hands to sweep in front of the windowsill against the wall to make sure there's not somebody there, we want to do that first before we slam our tool down. So that helps us just make sure that there's not a victim there. And then we can sound the floor to make sure that we have a solid floor to go on. One of the biggest arguments is head first, feet first. Everybody has their stance on it. Our stance has always been head first. And I think the important thing to talk about, Dave, is the why. Why head first, right? And we push head first mainly because you're not committing a lot of your body weight to the floor before you get in. When I have my thighs pretty much resting on the sill and I'm reaching in, I'm sweeping, and then I can use that time to sound the floor to make sure it's good before I commit all of my weight to it. If I'm coming in feet first, essentially once I've stepped down onto that floor, I'm putting my body weight on the floor and I'm committed to that operation. I'm committed to that floor. So those two things right there, sweeping first versus sounding, and making sure that we enter the proper way. I think that those were some of the other biggest talking points as it relates to van enter search, and some things that we wanted to share with the members listening as well.
Yeah, and one of the other things about going in feet first, and like you said, that it's we're not here to tell people you're doing it wrong, got to do it this way. But one of the things that we're looking at is when we do vent that window, you give that room time to kind of equalize. What is it going to do? You don't want to just smash the window and then jump in head first, because if you get a large rush of heat that's coming out, you don't want to take that face first. But you're being able to really get your body profile low through that windowsill and get right down on the ground and be able to stay low. And then finding the door. What's the trick that we use to find the door, especially when we're talking about outside walls versus where those bedroom doors are?
Yeah, so it's funny. We talk about the corner trick quite a bit, and that was something that Frank Ritchie taught us many, many years ago, which is still one of the greatest tricks of vent enter search. But the corner trick pretty much is us being able to say, if I am entering a bedroom, and let's just say, for example, I'm entering the bedroom on the alpha quadrant, on the alpha Bravo side. And if for those listening, those people that use numbers, that would be our number 1 and number 2 side. So if I'm entering that bedroom from that window on that corner, the alpha Bravo side and the alpha quadrant, right? Once I touch down on the floor, if I shoot diagonally across from that window, 9 out of 10 times I'll hit a door. And if I don't hit the door, I'm in the ballpark of the door. And let's just say you have the weird situation where you have a Cape Cod or something like that, where we're not even in the ballpark. Well, we're definitely on the wall. So at some point in time, if I run down the wall, I'll hit the door. One of the things, Dave, that I did was I captured a poll from everybody who came through the vent enter search training. How many people would that tactic work in the house that you live in today? And I would probably say for every group of 6, I would probably say 4 or 5 out of the 6 that work in their house. So, again, it doesn't necessarily work every single time. It doesn't work for every place, but it's a good place to start when you come in to do a vent enter search to get to the door. Now, that same perspective, if I put it, let's flip sides, right? Let's go to the alpha delta side. And again, for those who use numbers, that would be our number 1 and our number 4 side. So which would be our delta quadrant, right? So if I came in that window on the alpha delta side, or the number 1, number 4 side, that quadrant, if I came in that farthest window at the corner of the house and I shot diagonally from that window, 9 out of 10 times I'd hit the door up against that wall. And if I didn't hit the door, again, I'd be in the ballpark. And if I'm just way far left field, I'm on the wall at least, and I could run that wall down to hit the door. I'll tell you right now, and I love the fact that Frank Ritchie taught us that many years ago. Frank's, really good with search tactics, and all of us have learned so much from Frank. But that is something that I do continue to share of Frank's, and it seems to work everywhere you go. I would say everywhere, but it seems to work for the majority of the places you go to.
Yeah, and it's also true for the Charlie side or the rear side as well. Utilizing that outside wall diagonally away from that outside wall, finding that door. It definitely rings true for my house, and I do the same thing when we're teaching. We talk about vent enter search, and we talk about that crisscross method, and people are you see the light bulb go off as soon as you start talking about their particular house, and like, oh yeah, I never thought about that, which is cool. Passing it on. Last thing we're going to talk about that search is ladders. A lot of people are quick to take that ladder and jam it through the window, smash that window out before they get a chance to climb the window. I know we're trying to kind of get away from that. We want to be able to control that opening. We don't want to take that window until we're ready to go inside. But just talking about setting ladders up. Now, I've always been a proponent that when you set ladders up, you're setting them up 99.9% of the time, we're setting them up for rescue. And the reason being is because those ladders are for us to go in and to come out. First and foremost, the ladders are for us. So if we have to come out quickly, we don't want to have to contend with rungs up in a ladder, things like that, or not even having a ladder there, but to be able to reach over that sill and find that ladder. Is that something that you see as being taught more and more now? People are abandoning the whole couple of rungs above the top windowsill so we can ventilate, and then we'll get down and reposition the ladder. If we're going to ventilate, we're going to be at the windward side, so we want to put the ladder here. To me, it's a lot of maneuvers. If you're venting that window, you're going to vent it for a reason. And I'm looking at everything as ladders go up for rescues for us.
Yeah, I think that, again, I hate to keep using the same word over and over again, but culture, right? I think that when we talk about our culture, our department's culture, our ladder culture, that all needs to resonate in how we conduct business. That needs to be our culture, right? We need to be throwing ladders every time for rescue for civilians, rescue for firefighters going in and out. One of the things I would like to add, though, that we don't necessarily get to talk about much, we don't get to train on much, is obstacles within the windows, right? So a lot of times, when we get to the window, and it's hard to duplicate this in training every single scenario for each person that's going through, but obstacles, right? Our blinds, our curtains, and most importantly, one of the biggest pain in the ass is the window screens. A lot of times when we go up to take these windows, and I'm not even gonna lie, it just recently happened to me not too long ago. You go to put your tool through the window, you pull the tool out, next thing you know, you have the whole window screen coming down on you. Now you got a square head because this thing they got all wrapped around you. But those obstacles, right? Because that is time consuming. Those are things that we have to deal with. A lot of times I like to try to rip them out. The screens, the frames are really, really thin, cheap metal. If we can bend them a little bit, just enough to get them out and drop them down to the street or to the ground. And then the blinds themselves, right? A lot of times when we can take a window, but when we bring the hook or the bar on the exit, we're taking those mess of blinds with us. So I like to tell people, if you can reach up inside and you can hook that crossbar that's holding the blinds in place and rip that all the way down and out, that'll save you so much headache in the long run. If we try to enter the window with those blinds in place, we have a nightmare on our back, a nightmare wrapped up around our bottles. It's a nuisance, and it slows down the operation of getting in. Again, that's not something we can duplicate every single time in training. Obviously, we do the best we can, but that is something to consider.
Yeah, and it goes back to the old saying, or the old adage that, when you take a window, you make it a door. So not only for the screens and the glass and the sash, but also the window dressings and things like that are in there. That window needs to be perfectly clear, because if you have to come out, the last thing you want to contend with is getting tangled up in Venetian blinds and all that stuff. So when you take a window, make it a door. So I want to move on to a little bit about one of your favorite topics, forcible entry, and the luck slash skill. When we talk about forcible entry and how we force, I think just about anybody can take a hydro ram and put it in a door, or a hydraulic forcible entry tool, and force a door and be successful. But it's the people that master that conventional forcible entry, where you're using the Halligan bar and the axe or a set of Halligans, and being able to force a door, or finding those doors that are very tricky. A lot of things that we talk about, the low profile doors, or the doors that have zero clearance, where, tight spaces and things like that, or where you're going to have to force a door with a set of Halligans as opposed to an axe. So let's go ahead and roll into a little bit about forcible entry. I know you like talking about it. I'm just going to turn you loose and just talk about the things that you've learned along the way, and how you keep people from turning that Halligan bar into a baton and more of a tool that you're going to be setting it into the door correctly every single time.
Yeah, I think, again, it starts with training, right? And I know I've probably said this on 100 different podcasts, 100 different recordings. That's everything that we do in the fireground is basic. Every skill that we do in the fireground is basic. Stretching a hose line is basic. Throwing a ladder is basic. Forcing a door is basic. All of those skills are basic. What creates those skills being advanced skills are the variables that are tied to those skills, right? Now, forcing a door is a very basic skill, right? But now, when I have this door that's at the bottom of a set of basement stairs, I have walls on 2 to 3 sides of the door. It creates tight space. Now that basic skill now has become a challenge, right? And so a lot of the times, one of the biggest things is being able to practice and understand the basic mechanics of how do we use our tools. Once we understand the basic mechanics of how to use our tools, then we add those variables to it, right? And now we're practicing with the variables. One of the biggest things is I think a lot of times people don't understand that if we have a good size up process, right? If I step off the rig and I look at this door from the rig to the door to the actual front super step, and I'm sizing this door up, there's a bunch of things that I'm looking for. One, I'm looking at the door itself. So what is this door made out of? Is it made out of metal? Is it made out of wood? What is this frame made out of? Is this frame made out of metal? Is it made out of wood? What's the combination of those two, right? Do I have a metal frame wood door? Do I have a metal frame metal door? Do I have a wood frame wood door? Any of those combinations, right? Which way does the door swing? Does the door swing in and to the right? Does the door swing in and to the left? Does it swing out? You know, all of those things are just things that I'm playing out in my mind, right? How many locks on the door that I can physically see with my two eyes, right? And then how many locks on there that I think might be in existence on the door. And last but not least, what is this frame set in, right? Is this frame set in a block and brick wall, or is it set into a studded out wall? If I have a frame that's set into a studded wall, I might be able to get that frame to flex a little bit more than I could if it was set into a block and brick wall. So all of this starts with our size up process, which is from the rig to the door, and I'm processing all of these things so that when I get to the door, I am now in a better position to say, yep, this is a metal frame, metal door. Yep, this door swings in and to the left. I'm going to go ahead with my adds technique, which means I'm going to rotate my bar down, opposite of the pike. Once I get that gap, I'm going to progress capture that gap, adds on the backside of the frame all day long, right? So that way, when I get to the door, I'm not baton twirling. I'm literally executing the tactics. I think that a lot of times, all of that stuff that I'm talking about, that whole size up process, that comes from you riding in the rig, that comes from you driving in your car and constantly looking at doors. And not to get so far off track, Dave, and if I do, reel me in a little bit. I noticed that a lot of younger guys and girls who ride in the back of the fire truck, they're no longer looking out the windows and looking at the buildings as we drive by. A lot of times they're on their phones doing whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Drives me fucking nuts, right? Because when I was in the back, I'm constantly looking at the doors, the windows, structures, what's going on, because we're going to run them. It's only a matter of time of when, right? We're going to run them. So I feel like that size up process, I've already started that process long before we got the call, right? So when we get the call, now I'm just putting together the plan in place that I've already put together, already had a file folder in my memory for it. Yep, this is such and such street. Yep, I already sized that door up. It's got 2 locks here. It's got a lock way up there. I'm ready to go for it. So I would honestly say, Dave, before we even get long into the tactics, the size up is the biggest thing, and that starts long before we even get the call.
Yeah, one of the things that we teach, we talk about is size up. Obviously we can size up that front door pretty easily. We run into some challenging doors that have challenging locks and things like that. It's those Charlie side doors, especially in the commercial structures, and we teach people how to size that up just by recognizing the bolts that are on the door, and how they're configured, of what type of lock do you have on there, and it does do me me a lot of good knowing that when I talk about the different bolt configurations on there, people understand what I'm talking about when we're teaching. So it lets me know that they're still learning. They are just not, I got checked out to ride the truck and now I'm going to look at my phone when I'm driving down the road. They understand the different configurations of the lag bolts that are on the door and what could possibly be securing that door. So that makes me feel good that people are still doing the size up and understand what things are. But you're 100% correct. Nothing made me more excited than when we got our first enclosed cab fire engines and we actually had seats that faced forward when I was riding in the back. Because when you're riding backwards, you don't get to see what the guys are seeing up front. But the day that we had those flip down seats, you put your SCBA on, next thing you know, you're sitting in the flip down seat. So you can see when you're coming into the block, the type of neighborhood that you're coming into. to me, that was a game changer for me, because I could see what the officer was seeing, and I could see the structures that we were coming into, what the garden apartments, what was the age of those garden apartments, which is going to kind of let me know what kind of doors were going to be on those buildings, and what my forcible entry techniques were going to be. So yeah, I think long before we start talking about how to force the door, you got to know what you're looking at, so you can start formulating plan B and C, because A might not work, and you need to be able to say A's not working, let's move on to plan B, and whatever that might be. But that comes from experience and time on the rig, and training, going out and taking a look and thinking about how are we going to defeat these types of locks, and even so far as going and talking to door companies, saying like, hey, what's the new stuff out on the market, and talk, being friendly with those merchants that are out there putting in doors and locks and things like that, pays dividends to me.
Yeah. So, and then the next thing I would like to add on to that after the size up process is the tool selection, right? So a lot of times people just don't understand what tools work for what kind of doors, what kind of frames, what kind of locks, and most importantly, what tools work in conjunction with other tools. I wrote a special service for many years. That's what I was assigned to. And one of the biggest things we always taught was to make sure you understood what each person was bringing. If you were riding in the third position on the rescue, you were responsible for the irons as a new person. And then once you gained a little bit of experience riding in that position, we allowed that person to remove the flat head axe from the equation and insert a hook. But that was only under the condition that the officer was bringing a bar as well, right? Because we can force the door with two Halligans together, right? And then the driver obviously was a senior man. Yeah, he had free reign to bring whatever he wants. Most of the times, the drivers themselves also brought a hook and a Halligan. So at a minimum, all three people getting off the rig had a Halligan bar in hand, which allowed us to be able to force a door, which allowed us to be able to open up, check for extension, and check for fire movement. It never fails. Any fireground you go to, you're always going to find a flat head axe at the front door, because that's the tool that always gets dropped the most. Nobody ever carries a flat head axe through a structure. But with that being said, a lot of times people don't realize, right? Our hydro rams, our rabbit tools, those tools, they're not going to do us well on commercial doors, right? Because the door swings in a different direction, and the tool is designed to be used in a different fashion, right? Hydro rams, rabbit tools were designed to be used on metal frames, metal doors, inward swinging. We're not going to be able to use that tool on an exterior commercial door that swings outward. So again, I say it's important to know how your tools work, how they work in conjunction with other tools, and how they were designed to be used. And that all comes from experience, right? Passing that knowledge down to newer people riding in special services.
Yeah, and what you said about those hydraulic tools, understand what they're there for. They're there for the doors that are in metal frames. If you're trying to pull that out on a residential structure, 99% of the time you'd probably be able to force that door with the hydro ram. But the moment you pull that rabbited piece of wood off, it's just barely tacked in. You no longer have that push to be able to force that door. So the tool of choice should be going with a set of irons, or at least with a Halligan bar, and throwing the ads in there and spreading that door off. So people need to understand what the tools are designed for and the type of doors that they're designed for. Moving on with doors, let's talk a little bit about roll-up doors. One of the things that we like to teach, we don't get to cut them that often, but when you do have to cut them, there are some techniques that we use based on the construction of the door, because not all roll-up doors are created equal. So let's talk a little bit about roll-up doors and how we're defeating them, plus the locking mechanisms that we're going to see on them.
Yeah, again, having a good tool selection, right? We always want to have, if we can, our saw complement. And then not too long ago, we did an article on this, but our saw complement being that we have one saw specifically set up for roof operations and regular, woods and that kind of stuff. And then having a saw set up for our forcible entry, right, which is our metal blade K12 saw. And so being able to bring that saw a hook, and a bar is the main tools that we want to have at the gate. One of the biggest things is understanding, again, size up, right? What kind of gates do you have? What kind of doors do you have in your community? Where I work at in Frederick, we don't have a ton of steel roll gates. We don't. We have a handful of them, and they're very much spread out throughout the city. But a lot of the times we have regular roll-up doors that have non-sliding slats. Understanding the construction of them is important, right? Because roll-up doors with non-sliding slats give the appearance of a steel roll gate with sliding slats. Essentially, when you look at it, it has that ripple effect to it, but it's really just one sheet of corrugated steel that just has the ripples to it that looks like a roll-up with sliding slats. To put it in perspective, so people understand what I'm talking about, those are the doors that you commonly would find at like your storage facilities, where those are sheets of steel with the ripple effect that gives that look like a steel roll gate. And then understanding our three types of cuts, right? We have our slash cut, our box cut, and our inverted V cut. We cover this in great detail in our presentation, and then for those who have never seen it, our slash cut is mainly our cuts that we use for steel roll gates with sliding slats, where I'm going to make 2 or 3 cuts in the actual gate itself and be able to pull the slats off the gate and get the gate to actually roll up. Our box cut is pretty much a 3 or 4 series cuts, where we're taking a vertical, a horizontal, and another vertical, all of those cuts intersecting, and then we're taking that whole middle square out. Our box cut, it works great for steel roll gates. It works great for rolling steel, and it also works great for regular commercial and residential garage doors. And then last but not least, our inverted V cut, which is the common cut, an old school cut. I'm sure people are going to probably dig me for this day for saying this publicly, but I still to this day don't have a problem with the inverted V cut if it is made properly. The problem is we're not talking about the proper cut of an inverted V. We're talking about the bad cuts. And what the bad cut of an inverted V cut is the saw operator cutting the V or the inverted triangle for the saw operator, not the operations. So if I stand in one spot in front of the gate or in front of the garage, and I make a triangle in front of the gate in the garage, and I don't actually physically move left to right of the gate or the garage, I made a cut for RJ. I didn't make a cut for this operation. And when you step back and look at it, all I have is a small triangle and a really, really big door, and I'm not allowing that smoke, the heat, the gases to exit that space, right? So how we want to properly make that cut is we want to make the cut all the way to the far side of the door, left and right, as much as we can. Now, again, you will still have some triangles in the far top left, top right, that remit into the door, right, or remit into the frame. And it's not letting smoke out of those corners, but we're still getting a lot of smoke and heat out of the main body of the triangle. So again, I say, is it my favorite? No, but does it still work? Yes, it does when we do it right. I like to tell people, and this is just RJ's opinion, you can take it or leave it, I think the box cut is the way to go. It's a short thing. I can do it in all 3 types of doors. I can do it in a steel roll gate. I can do it in a rolling steel. I can do it in a garage door. The box cut works great as long as my cuts overlap, and I don't cut into a seam. A lot of times people make the mistake when they put the blade of the saw into the gate, they cut into the seam and they're having a hard time cutting the horizontal cut. Not only are we struggling because we got to bring the saw up our head to cut, but what also is happening is we're fighting the blade against the pressure of the door sitting down on the street or the driveway or the sidewalk. So as long as we're not cutting in a seam, if we're cutting in the middle of the slat or in the middle of the door or in the middle of the steel, we'll have no problem all day long, and the saw blade will cut like it's going through butter. So just some tidbits, Dave. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, the TP cut or the inverted V, that cut still works, but you physically, like you said, you have to move with the saw so you can make that opening big enough to start an operation. 2 or 3 people on a 2.5 if that's what they're moving in. Truck companies coming in behind them. We don't want to have to file in single file, because if we have to get out pretty quick, we don't want to have to try to get out single file either. So that's where people need to understand that when we're doing that inverted V, it's got to be big. I'm with you. I'm a fan of that box cut. You're basically making a door in the door, and you're allowing for a lot of smoke movement, but you're also allowing a lot of people to be able to get in to start that operation. One thing that I do want to caution people, or just to understand, that when you're working in commercial structures like auto body shops and things like that, and you're working around those garage doors, understand the motors that drive those doors, they weigh hundreds of pounds. So once you get that door open, try to stay away from the middle of that door as you move in, because those motors are just mounted with bolts, and if you're taking a lot of heat, those motors can fail and come down on you. It's going to ruin your day. So just something to be aware of. It's 3 to 4 times the size of your typical garage, residential garage door. And same holds true when we are cutting the garage doors for residentials. If you can use a saw that's set up with a carbide tip blade, or you can use a metal cutting blade. Understand that some of those doors are insulated, so you'll have that styrofoam going everywhere. It's going to make a mess, but definitely get them up. Or if you get the door to go up, if you don't have to cut it, you need to make sure that you're securing the track that door rides on, because you don't want it to come down. Just take a Halligan bar fork, put it in there, and just do a quarter turn so you can bend that track over so that door doesn't come down on you. And then last but not least, as we're coming down towards the end, RJ, I want to talk about roof work. It's kind of, I think we're in a flux right now. Back in the day, we would go to the roof quite often and open up the roof if it needed to happen. And then we started transitioning into, and I think Hackensack, Jersey fire, we had a loss of life, kind of bought into light the truss construction, and we didn't want to put anybody on a truss construction. And yes, I would agree, if you actually have fire physically burning underneath of you that is going at that truss construction. But there is a time and a place that the roof needs to be open. And I think you see us kind of transitioning back into incident commanders taking a look at what the structure is doing, and saying, hey, if I get a hole opened up in that roof, am I going to be able to alleviate some heat conditions or lift some smoke conditions so the crews can get up to the upper floors and perform a search? So let's talk a little bit about roof operations, the tools, your situational awareness. What are you looking for, and what are you hoping to gain when you get up there? And we'll talk a little bit about residential roofs versus some commercial roofs, and some of the things that we find when we working on those commercial flat roofs versus those pitched residential roofs.
So I think one of the biggest problems, and I can't speak for everybody, but I think one of the common problems is timing. I think that when we talk about getting to the roof, a lot of times people, their timing's late. And by the time they want to get to the roof, sometimes it's just not good time. I think that when we decide that we're going to go to the roof, we need to decide that early on, right out the gate, that we're going to send people to the roof. I think the biggest thing is, why are we sending people to the roof, and when do we want to do that, right? Obviously, the number one reason we want to send people to the roof: top floor fires and attic fires. If we have top floor fires, if we have attic fires, we need to get that space opened up above so that we can let the heat out, and we can let the gases in. If there's fire, let that out. Sometimes people really bug out when fire comes out of a roof. Guess what? I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is get that stuff out of that space, right? And people sometimes really lose their shit, but we're actually doing a good job and doing what we're supposed to be doing. Now, we don't need to sit up there and gawk at this and take, pictures of this forever. Once we've achieved the goal, get off the roof, or we've achieved the goal, right? So I think the biggest thing, Dave, is timing. A lot of times we make that decision a little too late in the game, that we need to get people up on the roof to get that process started. I think that once we identify we have a top floor fire or a attic fire, we need to automatically start getting crews onto the roof. Now, one of the biggest things is it's always going to be a determining factor, depending on department, city, state, whatever, is personnel, right? Sometimes we just don't have the personnel to dedicate to the roof, whereas sometimes, we might, some places do. And if that's the case, cool, so be it. we get the job done. Where it really shows its ass is when we're dealing with roof operations on commercial buildings. Commercial roof operations on commercial buildings they're time consuming without a doubt. They're taxing on the members operating on the roof, and they do require a lot of tools. It never fails. Every commercial fire that I've been on, where I've been assigned to the roof or on the roof, we're going through many different saws. Sometimes we're going through different blades, and sometimes we have impromptu issues that pop up. Right, operate a chainsaw, you pop a chain, or using a abrasive blade, your disc is worn down to nothing, and so you got to correct these issues as they're happening. I have been on a couple fires where it's been just hole after hole after hole, expanding these holes. Now you're running out of fuel, and all these different types of problems. So not only is the staffing a problem, but the equipment tends to be another problem too. Having the number of people that can help carry all of these things up to the roof. So I've always been a fan of roof operations. I think it's, again, timing, equipment, and personnel all play a big factor in roof operations. The science shows that if we can open up this space and we can let this heat, we can let this smoke, we can let this fire out of that space, it does make the conditions better on the inside. Now, I'm no scientist. I'm not a rocket scientist, and nor am I expert on this, like some of these guys who work on these panels and do the research on it. But on a basic level, the science has shown that it does work and it is effective.
Right. And so people understand, if you are leery about getting on a roof, if you got a fire in the attic space, a decent advanced fire in the attic space, I say, okay, if I'm not going to commit somebody to the roof, but I need it opened up right away because these guys are working underneath, we're going to start pulling ceilings. Drop a hole in the gables. If they have a gable vent, take the plastic gable vent out, make the hole a little bit bigger. You're still achieving ventilation. You're still relieving the heat and the gases and things like that. But you're absolutely right. It's something that if the incident commander arrives on the scene right away, they got to take a look at it and think, if I get this roof opened up right now, I've got lines that are pulling up to the second floor. We've got smoke conditions, or we've got a fire running in the attic. Let's go ahead and drop a hole in there. Lift those conditions up to give those guys a chance to get up, see what's going on, drop the ceilings, things like that. People need to understand that fire exerts pressure. And if you relieve that pressure, you're not going to have that chance of that ceilings coming down on you and things like that. So, for the residential wise, you got to make that call early on. Also, listen to your people on the inside. The Cape Cod houses, you get those red flags of, high heat conditions, zero visibility, we can't find the fire, those type of things. You need to start thinking about knee walls and dropping vent holes in the knee walls and things like that. Talking about those commercial roofs, I mean, we went up to West Virginia and had that old commercial roof. And I can tell you right now, 4 people are not going to effectively open up a commercial roof. You're going to need 6 to 12 people up there with a couple of saws running to get a good, 8x8 hole, or if you're, doing that 7-9-8 cut or that coffin cut, and then the people to be able to pull that material out. 3 people aren't going to be able to do that. You're going to have to marry up companies to be able to get that operation going. Rubber membranes, cut that away, carry a knife with you, some type of a blade, get that rubber membrane off of there so you can expose the roof underneath. And then last but not least, we talk about rain roofs. You make that vent hole, and you make a nice vent hole with something you want to take a picture of, and you realize, hey, there's a roof underneath of this roof. That's something that needs to be communicated to command right away. I mean, you need to get off the roof. We're not going to commit anybody to jump down into the hole that you just made to make another hole. But people need to understand that we're not going to be able to vent that space because of the rain roof that's on there. So a lot of good stuff. And I'm with you, RJ. If the roof needs to be open, then you open the roof. That's just the way it is. If the crew's inside saying, we're having a hard time making the stairs, open the roof. If you've got a decent fire going in a large house in an attic space, open the roof. Utilizing your your ladders, your roof ladders, and things like that to distribute your weight out, so you can make those cuts. And then once it's cut, like you said, get off the roof. There's no reason to admire the hole that you just made. You can talk about it later at the kitchen table. So we're wrapping up here. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up when it comes to special service work and things like that?
No, I mean, I love special service work. I've done it since a very young age, living in the firehouse. And special service work is one of the, fine skills of the fire ground, but it comes with a lot of work. It comes with a lot of training. It's not basic. It's a little more advanced. It requires doing a little bit more research. It requires doing a little more training. And it requires going in places that some people just are not comfortable going in or going to. With that being said, I would encourage everybody to make sure you're constantly learning, constantly engaging in these positions on the fire ground, because a lot of times command officers rely on these special positions to handle things on the fire ground, and you gotta have people who know what they're doing to make it happen.
Yeah, and I've said it 1,000 times. You shouldn't be putting the new people on the truck companies and the rescue squads if they haven't mastered the engine company stuff. Unfortunately, the day and age that we're in with reduced staffing and things like that, that doesn't always happen. So the officer's going to have to be pretty savvy, and they're going to have to be pointing people in the correct direction. But like you said, you're in a volunteer company, you're doing a duty night or something like that. Get your crews out there and let's talk about special service work. Let's talk about saws, the tools and what they do. So if you only have less than a year in the fire department, you don't have a lot of special service experience under your belt, let's at least know what the tools are and how to use them. So when we get on the fire ground, we're going to be effective. But, it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes the younger guy, especially if you're home response coming up to get the second piece out the door, that might be the ladder truck. You got who you got, and you try to make the best with what you have. I know that doesn't sound promising, but it all comes down to training. You should be in the firehouse training your new people when they're getting out of their Fire 1 class to if you have a special service in your house, you should be training on that. So before we wrap up, we've got some stuff that's coming up for us, some training that we have coming up. And I know we have a couple of memorial training that we're doing, at least one where the Ficus memorial training is coming up, amongst other things. What do we got?
We got that coming up.
Okay. What do we got coming up?
We will be in Butler County, PA. We're doing the Jimmy Ellis Memorial Training August 16th through the 18th. That's going to be a really, really good program. Lots of great instructors from all over the country. Friends of ours, people that we too have learned from, some friends that we have grown up with. A lot of great instructors are going to be there. That's August 16th through the 18th. Again, in Butler County, PA. Just after that, we'll be back in Newark, Delaware, doing the annual Jerry Ficus Memorial Training Weekend. This year marks the 5th year anniversary of the Jerry Ficus Memorial Training. So we're going to go all out. We're doing it pretty big. We're going to be doing live fire RIT, which is going to be a pretty good educational weekend. We also have some special guests from the fire in Wilmington, where the three, Christopher Leach, Artie Hope, and Jerry Ficus, succumbed to their injuries on that fire. We have some special guests that worked that fire that will be at the training as well. So that's going to be September 21st and 22nd. That's a weekend class. I will say space is running out for that class. I think last we looked, we had 9 spots left out of 23 spots. So get on it now. Although it is a month and a half away, it's 9 spots. So last but not least, the Upstate Fire Conference, which is in South Carolina, Anderson, South Carolina, October 18th through the 20th. We'll be down there doing forcible entry class there as well. So I know registration opens up July 29th for that conference as well. So just a couple things that we have on the radar. That'll take you into the next couple months, and then I'm sure in the next couple of months we do another couple podcasts. We'll have another wave of stuff to report back to you guys. So get onto our website, capitalfiretraining.com. You can check out the different events, the Jimmy Ellis Memorial Training, the Jerry Fickus, and the Upstate Fire Conference in South Carolina.
Yeah, and to the people that are watching, obviously this is not going to be live, so you're not going to have live chat. But if you do have questions, want to know about any of the things that we do, the props that we use, or any questions about this show or anything at all, leave a comment down at below the video, and RJ and I and Sam, we check probably every other day. If we see something up there, we'll get right back to you. If you're looking for something in particular, you have a question, we're more than happy to give you whatever it is that you're looking for. So we got Villani'd. So we'll go out and say that we did get Sam. We did get Villani, but I know he was taking care of his little ones, which, little ones can be a handful, and his kids mean the world to him. So as we say, Sam's on assignment. He's on daddy duty. But with that being said, RJ, another great show. Appreciate it. We getting on here. I know the people appreciate being able to hear us just kind of talk candidly, and I'm really enjoying this talking tactics. It's nice to talk tactics as opposed to admin stuff. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's cool, man. And I really would be remiss if we didn't say thank you to Fire Engineering for allowing us to have this platform for us to just talk tactics. It's a cool thing that we can do to just spitball different things, different ideas, different tactics, different tools, different things that we come across on the fire ground. Again, it's just it's a great place to just unwind and talk fireman shit, really. So yeah, thank you as always.
All right, so as always, RJ, I'll let you take us out.
Cool. I just want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in. If you guys have any questions, like Dave said, hit us up. All of us are personable. We have social media accounts. Hit us up. We would love to hear from you. And as well as if you have something that you would like for us to talk about in our next Talking Tactics show, drop us a line. If you shoot us a question, we can answer it for you on the next gig.
All right. Till then, see you guys next month.
All right. See you guys.
Like a trusted turnout jacket you've had for years, Flex 7 outer shell fabric delivers a perfectly broken-in feel on the very first wear. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology, Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tencatafabrics.com/flex7. Flex 7, powered by enforced technology. Only from TenCate Protective Fabrics.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, those toxins lead to cancer. Protect yourself with MagnaGrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes. To get free grant assistance, visit magnagrip.com.